Zor oldu.
I am 69 years old and I have $247,000 sitting in my savings account. I can't walk to my mailbox without getting winded. I thought saving money meant securing my future. I was wrong. I secured nothing. You probably think time and money work the same way. Save enough of both and you'll be ready for whatever comes next. That's what I believed for 69 years. That's what everyone believes. We treat time like it's renewable, like we can always make more deposits later. I made that mistake every single day until 3 months ago when my doctor used words like progressive and irreversible about something happening in my lungs. I've always been good with numbers. I could tell you exactly how much I saved each month since 1978. I tracked every penny, every interest payment, every compound calculation. What I couldn't calculate was how much time I was spending sitting in bank lobbies instead of airport terminals. How many sunsets I missed because I was reviewing investment statements instead of booking flights. My wife used to bring me travel brochures. She'd spread them across our kitchen table like hope served on glossy paper. Italy, she'd say. Look at this little village in Tuscany. We could rent a small place for 2 weeks. She'd point to pictures of couples our age walking hand in hand down narrow stone streets, sitting at outdoor restaurants with wine glasses, catching the afternoon light. Her finger would trace the cost printed in small type at the bottom of each page. See, she'd say, it's not as much as you think. But I'd already done my own math. Flights, hotels, meals, the exchange rate, travel insurance, the money we wouldn't be earning while we were gone. I'd glance at the numbers and shake my head. Too expensive. Maybe next year. Maybe when we have more saved up. Maybe when the market settles down. Maybe became my favorite word because it let me postpone everything without saying no. She stopped bringing the brochures around 15 years ago. I found them last month in a box in our closet. 43 brochures from places we never saw. Dates spanning 28 years. She'd written little notes on some of them. For our anniversary, on a Greek island package. After Kamal retires, on an Alaska cruise. Each note, a small act of faith that someday my answer might be different. The day I found out about my lungs, I was sitting in Dr. Patterson's office, looking at an X-ray of my chest. There were shadows where there shouldn't be shadows. He was explaining something about scarring and capacity, but all I could think about was a conversation I had with my wife in 1994. She wanted to see the northern lights. Alaska, she said. We're still young enough to handle the cold. I told her we needed to finish paying off the house first. The house we paid off in 1997. We never saw the northern lights. Dr. Patterson kept talking about treatments and managing symptoms, but I wasn't really listening. I was doing math in my head, not medical math, money math. All those years of saving 10%, then 15%, then 20% of every paycheck. All those vacations we didn't take, those restaurants we didn't try, those experiences we filed under someday while our someday account grew larger and our actual days grew smaller. You know what's funny about money? It doesn't expire. You can leave it sitting in an account for 30 years and it'll still be there, probably with interest. Time doesn't work that way. Time has an expiration date you don't know about until it's too late to use what you've been saving. I never understood why my wife seemed sad during our retirement party. We had more money saved than most people. We were secure. We were prepared. But prepared for what? To sit in our paid-off house, watching the Travel Channel, living vicariously through strangers who were brave enough to spend their money while they could still walk upstairs without stopping halfway. When I got home from Dr. Patterson's office, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. I looked up flight prices to Italy. Not because I was planning to go. My traveling days are pretty much over now. I looked because I wanted to know what all that saying no had actually cost me. A round-trip ticket to Rome today costs about $800. In 1995, when my wife first suggested Italy, it would have cost maybe $600. I saved $600 and lost everything. The thing about being careful with money is that everyone tells you you're smart, responsible, planning ahead, and you feel good about it. You feel like you're winning some kind of game. Every month, watching that balance grow, you think you're building something important: security, freedom, options. But here's what nobody tells you about saving for someday. Someday has conditions. Someday assumes your knees will still work. Someday assumes your energy won't fade. Someday assumes you'll still want to climb mountains, or walk through museums, or sit in sidewalk cafes. Someday assumes your body will honor your bank balance. My body didn't get that memo. I have a list somewhere of places my wife and I talked about visiting. She made it in the 1980s, wrote it on the back of a grocery receipt. Paris, Greece, Ireland, Iceland, New Zealand, Japan, 7 places. If we had spent $5,000 a year on travel, instead of putting it into savings, we could have visited all 7 places twice. Instead, that list is still stuck to our refrigerator, faded and yellowed, like a map to a treasure we convinced ourselves we couldn't afford to find. The hardest part isn't the money I saved, it's the time I traded for that money. Every overtime hour I worked instead of coming home to plan a weekend trip. Every investment seminar I attended instead of research which hotels had the best views in San Francisco. Every financial newsletter I read instead of learning basic phrases in French or Italian or Portuguese. I optimized my entire life for a future that assumed I'd be healthy enough to enjoy it. My neighbor Jim, he's 73. Last month he was showing me pictures on his phone from his trip to Scotland. 3rd time he's been there, he said. Started going when he was 55, right after his first heart attack. His first heart attack. Most people would slow down after something like that. Jim decided he'd better speed up. He doesn't have nearly as much money as I do. He drives a 12-year-old Honda. He lives in the same house he bought in 1976. But he's been to 47 countries. 47. I've been to 3 states and Canada. And the Canada trip was for my nephew's wedding, so it barely counts. Jim told me something that keeps me up at night. He said the difference between a dreamer and a traveler is about $200, and the willingness to be uncomfortable for a few days. That's it. Then he showed me a photo of himself standing in front of Machu Picchu at sunrise. 71 years old, wearing a backpack, grinning like a teenager. The next photo was him in a small restaurant in Peru, sharing a meal with locals who couldn't speak English but were teaching him to eat guinea pig with his hands. I spent 50 years afraid of being uncomfortable for a few days while I sat comfortably in the same chair, in the same house, in the same routine, watching my comfort turn into confinement. You probably have a list too. Maybe not written down, but somewhere in your head. Places you've seen in movies or read about in books or heard friends talk about when they come back with stories and pictures and experiences you wish you had. Maybe you tell yourself the same things I told myself. Too expensive, too complicated, too much time away from work, too risky. But here's the question I wish someone had asked me 30 years ago. Too expensive compared to what? Too expensive compared to the cost of lying in bed at night, wondering what Paris looks like in the spring. Too expensive compared to never knowing how it feels to stand in a place where people lived and loved and worked 1,000 years before you were born. I can tell you exactly how much money I have. I check my balance every morning, like some people check the weather. But I can't tell you what the sunset looks like from a beach in Hawaii, or how ancient the stones feel when you touch the walls of a castle in Scotland, or what it sounds like when someone welcomes you to their city in a language you don't speak, but somehow understand. My wife and I used to watch travel documentaries together. We'd sit on our couch, eating dinner off TV trays, watching other people explore temples in Thailand or markets in Morocco. She'd lean over during the commercials and say things like, "That doesn't look so expensive," or "We could do that," And I'd nod, but I was already calculating the cost, already thinking of reasons why it wasn't practical, already filing it under someday. What I didn't calculate was the cost of all those documentaries, all those vicarious trips, all those second-hand adventures. If I'd spent half as much energy planning real trips as I spent planning my financial future, we'd have albums full of our own pictures instead of memories of watching other people's lives on a screen. The morning after my diagnosis, I went to my desk and pulled out all my financial statements, retirement accounts, savings accounts, investment portfolios, the works. I spread them across the dining room table like my wife used to spread those travel brochures. All those numbers, all those years of growth, all that security I'd built. Then I went to my computer and looked up the cost of a first-class ticket to Italy. Not because I'm going. Like I said, those days are behind me now. But because I wanted to know what the best possible version of that trip would cost. First-class flights, luxury hotel, private tours, the finest restaurants, everything my practical mind would have rejected as unnecessary extravagance. The total for 2 people, 2 weeks, everything included, about $15,000. I make that much in investment income every 6 months. I could have given my wife that trip every year for the past 20 years and still had more money saved than I know what to do with. We could have seen Italy in spring, autumn, winter, and summer. We could have learnt Italian together, developed favorite restaurants, made friends with locals, created traditions that belonged only to us. Instead, I have a very impressive bank balance and memories of her looking through those brochures alone after I stopped paying attention. She passed away 2 years ago, quietly, in her sleep, which the doctor said was the best way. I suppose he was right, but I wish we'd had a few more conversations about those places she wanted to see. I wish I'd paid more attention to the way her eyes lit up when she talked about walking through vineyards or sitting in sidewalk cafes or watching gondoliers in Venice. Now those conversations exist only in my memory, and my memory is all I have left of the adventures we never took. The thing about regret is it's very precise. It doesn't generalize. I don't regret being careful with money in some vague, overall way. I regret specific decisions on specific days. I regret the morning in March 1989 when she showed me an article about cherry blossom season in Japan, and I said we should wait until we'd saved more for retirement. I regret the afternoon in 1996 when she suggested we take a long weekend in New York City, and I reminded her about the quarterly property tax payment. I regret every single time I chose an abstract future over a concrete present. If you're listening to this and you have someone in your life who wants to explore the world with you, don't do what I did. Don't turn their curiosity into your anxiety. Don't transform their dreams into your spreadsheets. Don't postpone their wonder until someday, because someday might not include them, and it definitely might not include you. The doctors say I have time left, but time and ability aren't the same thing. I have money and I have time, but I don't have energy. I don't have lungs that work the way they used to. I don't have knees that can handle cobblestone streets or back that can endure long flights. I have resources but not capability, which means I spent 40 years saving for a retirement I can't use. I'm telling you this because maybe you still have both. Maybe you still have the money and the health and the person who wants to see the world with you. Maybe your someday can still become today. If that's true, then you're richer than I've ever been, no matter what your bank balance says. The clock is ticking for all of us, but it's not ticking the same way for your money as it is for your body. Your money will be here long after your mobility is gone. Your savings will outlast your stamina. Your security will survive your ability to enjoy it. I learned that lesson at 69. You don't have to.
Zor oldu.